Singapore, often hailed as a shining example of what a small nation can achieve, known for its excellence in healthcare, education, recreation, and public transportation. It has one of the highest homeownership rates in the world at 89.7% in 2023. And what makes this feat all the more surprising is that Singapore isn't a big country, but only a small island with a size of 728 square kilometers, which roughly equates to 0.9 times the size of New York City, making it the third most densely populated country in the world, with a population density of 8,952 people per square kilometer. And despite this, Singapore is able to provide housing to almost all of its residents. But this was not always the case. In the mid-20th century, Singapore was going through a lot, from overcrowding, poor sanitation, to unemployment and extreme levels of poverty. Majority of Singaporeans lived in slums at the time, and diseases like tuberculosis was a common scenario. So how did Singapore achieve one of the highest homeownership rates in the world? Before 1819, Singapore was a modest trading outpost inhabited by a mix of different ethnic communities. Housing during this period consisted mainly of simple wooden structures built by these communities. While not that great, these dwellings served the needs of the relatively small population. From 1819 onwards, when the British colonized Singapore, it grew into a busy trading hub, and because of its strategic location, many people from China, India and nearby islands moved there, causing the population to explode. However, the influx of migrants far outpaced the development of housing infrastructure, resulting in an overcrowded and unsanitary living conditions, which contributed to the spread of diseases like cholera and tuberculosis. Despite the pressing need for housing, the colonial administration prioritized the development of commercial areas and port facilities, largely neglecting the needs of the growing population. After the World War in 1945, things got even worse. The war had damaged many buildings, and soldiers returning home couldn't find a decent place to live. So they started building temporary wooden houses on vacant land, which lacked even the basic sanitation and clean water facilities, and even these houses were overcrowded. In 1927, Singapore Improvement Trust was established by the British administration, but it proved to be a massive failure as it did not really have financial resources and political will from the government to undertake large-scale housing projects. The SIT's power was also very limited, making it difficult to acquire land for development. And on the other hand, Singapore's population was rising rapidly post-World War II, creating much greater demand for housing. So by the late 1950s, Singapore's housing crisis had reached a tipping point. And around this time, although Singapore was still a British colony, it enjoyed a greater degree of internal self-government. And this local government, which consists of elected representatives, possessed the autonomy to address pressing issues the island faced, including the critical issue of housing. So in 1960, Singapore's first Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew and his party replaced SIT with the Housing and Development Board. The HDB had to perform three primary functions. First, it had to identify and acquire land from various sources, including private landowners as well as the government agencies. Second, it had to construct residential buildings on the land so acquired that caters to people with different income groups. And finally, the HDB had to manage and maintain these residential buildings. Today, over 80% of Singaporeans live in HDB flat, of which about 90% own them. But what makes HDB such a groundbreaking success? First, the HDB adopted an approach to maximize the use of the land by constructing high-rise buildings to effectively utilize the limited land Singapore has. And today, the high-rise buildings in Singapore are synonymous with public housing. But what was really revolutionary about HDB was its emphasis on creating self-contained towns, also referred as HDB towns. The HDB towns were designed to be self-contained, meaning they offered a wide range of amenities and facilities within the walking distance of residential areas. These include schools, healthcare facilities, shopping malls, markets, recreational parks, sports complexes, and community centers. And these HDB towns are also well connected to public transportation networks, including bus services and MRT lines, making it easy for residents to commute to work, school, and other parts of Singapore. This accessibility reduces reliance on private vehicles and promotes sustainable transportation. These self-contained towns also include communal spaces such as parks, playgrounds, and gathering areas where residents can interact, socialize, and build relationships with their neighbors. The HDB also ensures that the flats in these towns are made in such a way that individuals and families with different financial means could find suitable housing options ranging from one-room apartment to 5-room flats, as well as executive condos that are similar to private condos. Now, a Singaporean can buy a HDB flat in two ways. First is BTO flats, and second is from the resale market. BTO flats or build-to-order flats is a concept where home buyers can choose from a selection of upcoming housing projects and apply for units that best suit their preferences and budget. Under this, the flats are directly purchased from the government at subsidized prices. But to be eligible, the person has to fulfill certain income and citizenship requirements, and waiting time for these flats can vary from 2 to 7 years. Young couples or families looking to buy their first home are generally preferred for BTO flats by the government. And once a home buyer receives the possession of a BTO flat, there is a minimum occupation period of 5 years, which means you cannot sell or rent out your flat before 5 years. Another option which is available to a home buyer is buying the flat from the resale market. But this can be a bit expensive, as price depends on several factors like flat size, location, floor level and market trends. However, restrictions to buy these flats are few, and even permanent residents are eligible to buy these flats from the resale market. And there is no minimum occupation period for these flats in case you want to resell or rent out. However, it is important to note that Singapore operates under a long-term ownership model, wherein HDB flat buyers acquire a lease for a period of 99 years. When the 99-year lease expires, the property is returned to the state, which will then recreate it for Singapore's new social and economic needs. The flat will then be recycled and rebuilt into newer HDB flats for future Singaporeans. And since the land is so scarce in Singapore, the lease keeps the prices of properties in check for future home buyers. In conclusion, Singapore's housing model offers valuable lessons for countries seeking to address their housing challenges and improve the well-being of their population. By prioritizing government intervention, long-term planning, and collaboration, we can create a future where housing is not just a basic need, but a fundamental human right for people everywhere. So guys, I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and do like, share and subscribe for more such amazing videos. Thank you and bye bye.